There are moments in life when silence feels too loud, when our own thoughts echo back to us with unsettling intensity, as if the mind itself were a storm that refuses to calm. We call it anxiety, a restless unease that creeps into the corners of our quiet moments. That tightens the chest, that whispers, "You are not enough. You are not ready. You are not safe." It's strange, isn't it, that we, beings who dream, create, and imagine galaxies, can be undone by something invisible, something as quiet as thought, and yet, perhaps that's the very reason anxiety exists. Because the human mind is vast enough to create both heaven and hell within itself. Tonight, we turn to a philosopher who stared into the depths of that inner storm, and did not look away. A man who confronted chaos, pain, and madness, not with avoidance, but with transformation. His name was Friedrich Nietzsche. Nietzsche's life was no stranger to suffering. Plagued by illness, loneliness, and isolation, he wandered the mountains of Switzerland and Italy, often writing through pain so unbearable it blurred his vision. But rather than fleeing from his torment, Nietzsche sought to understand it, to grasp why human beings suffer, and more importantly, how that suffering could become a force of growth, strength, and even beauty. In a world where most people seek to escape anxiety, Nietzsche dared to ask a radical question. What if anxiety is not a curse to eliminate, but a teacher to learn from? He believed that within our deepest discomfort lies a creative tension, a call to evolve, to transcend the boundaries of who we are. For Nietzsche, the anxious soul is not weak. It is, in fact, the birthplace of transformation. A signal that life is trying to grow through us. That something within us refuses to remain small. As you listen, I invite you to slow down your breath. Let the words move through you, not as lessons to memorize, but as quiet reflections that reach the spaces in you that rarely get to breathe. We will explore Nietzsche's insights not through rigid academic analysis, but through the rhythm of calm reflection. Together, we'll uncover how his philosophy, once seen as intense, even dangerous, can become a gentle, steadying companion in our anxious, modern lives. This is not about conquering anxiety. It's about understanding it. It's about learning to stand with it, to walk with it, and perhaps even to listen to what it's been trying to say all along. Because Nietzsche once wrote, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." So tonight, we will enter that chaos softly, slowly, and discover how, even in our restlessness, we can find something luminous waiting to be born. This is the story of what Nietzsche taught, about overcoming anxiety, not by escaping it, but by transforming it into strength, purpose, and light. Anxiety, in its purest form, is not an enemy, it is energy. It is the trembling of the soul before it takes a new shape. For Nietzsche, this trembling was a sign of life, of vitality, of something within us that is awake and restless. He saw anxiety not as a symptom to cure, but as a whisper from the depths of being itself. It is life saying, "You are standing on the edge of transformation." When we feel anxious, what we truly feel is the weight of becoming. We are caught between who we are and who we are meant to be. That tension, that invisible pull, is the root of all inner growth. Nietzsche understood this deeply. In his notebooks, he wrote that all creation begins in chaos. No artist, no thinker, no human being ever gave birth to something beautiful without first feeling the anxiety of creation, that uneasy silence before a breakthrough. That moment when the old self trembles before giving way to the new, the snake which cannot shed. Its skin must die, so, to the minds that are prevented from changing their opinions, they cease to be mind. For Nietzsche, Anxiety is the skin we are shedding. It is the discomfort of growth, the friction that comes from leaving behind certainty every time we feel restless or uncertain. We are brushing against the edges of a new possibility, but in our modern world, we often misunderstand this. We label our inattention as a flaw. We rush to numb it with noise, distraction, consumption. We scroll. We escape. We distract ourselves from the quiet. Because silence, the space where anxiety lives, feels unbearable. Nietzsche would tell us, do not run. He would say, sit with the storm. Because only in the storm does the self begin to awaken. He called this process becoming who you are. To become who you are is not easy. It demands that you confront the parts of yourself you have hidden, your doubts, your fears, your contradictions, anxiety. Then is the voice of these hidden parts, the shadow self rising to the surface. It asks to be seen. It asks to be integrated. It asks to be understood. Nietzsche believed that our unease is not random. It is purposeful. It is the psyche's way of preparing us for transformation. He compared it to the tension of a bow only. When the bow is drawn tight, cannot release an arrow with force. Without tension, there is no direction. Without anxiety, there is no depth. This is why Nietzsche warned against a comfortable life. He wrote that comfort makes us dull, that it lulls us into sleep. When life is too easy, we forget to grow. We forget to question. We forget to listen. What is happiness? He once asked. The feeling that power is growing, that resistance is being overcome. To Nietzsche, happiness was not calmness. It was movement. It was expansion. It was the quiet thrill of realizing that even through anxiety, we are growing stronger. He believed that modern humans suffer more from the fear of suffering than from suffering itself. We avoid discomfort so fiercely that we become prisoners of our own avoidance. We live half-lives, safe, but shallow. We never descend into our depths, and so we never discover the gold buried within our shadows. Nietzsche, however, went there willingly. He allowed anxiety to strip him bare. He let it destroy the illusions that comfort had built round him, and in that destruction, he found something sacred, clarity. He realized that what we fear most about anxiety is not the feeling itself, but what it reveals. It shows us that control is an illusion. It shows us how fragile our certainties are. It shows us that life, in all its beauty and terror, will not bend to our will. And yet, if we can stand in that realization without collapsing, if we can remain conscious amid the trembling, something miraculous happens. We begin to sense a deeper stillness beneath the chaos, a current that moves, not away from us, but through us, between past and future, between fear and freedom. The rope shakes, the abyss calls, but still, we must walk. Nietzsche often used the image of the tightrope walker, a man suspended between two towers, stepping carefully above the abyss. For him, that was the image of human existence. We are all walking the rope. When we sit quietly with it, when we breathe into it, we may begin to notice that anxiety carries messages. Sometimes it tells us that we are living out of alignment. Sometimes it tells us that we are suppressing something true, and sometimes it simply tells us that we are growing, because every transformation begins with trembling, every awakening begins with unease. Every self is born from the friction between what is and what could be. Nietzsche invites us to welcome this tension, to treat anxiety as a sacred visitor, one who arrives not to torment, but to initiate us into deeper self-awareness. So tonight, as you listen, if you feel the gentle ache of restlessness within you, do not fight it. Breathe. It is the sound of your soul stretching towards something vast. It is life itself reminding you. You are still becoming. Nietzsche once wrote to words that captured the heart of his philosophy. Amor fati, love your fate. To him, these were not poetic words. They were discipline, a spiritual practice, a way of saying yes to life, not only when it is beautiful, but also when it is heavy, uncertain, and full of anxiety. He believed that inner peace doesn't come from escaping discomfort. It comes from embracing it, from learning to look at life's unease with the same tenderness that we give to joy. To love your fate means to say, everything that has happened, even the pain, even the fear, belongs to me. It shaped me. It awakened me. Nietzsche wanted us to stop resisting what already is. He saw that resistance, that quiet war against reality, as the root of most suffering. Because when we fight what we cannot change, we only deepen the wound. But when we breathe and whisper yes to it, we transform the wound into wisdom. Anxiety, then, becomes a kind of teacher, a mirror, a signal that reminds us we are alive, still learning, still human. Nietzsche called this transfiguration. The art of turning darkness into light, pain into meaning, and restlessness into creativity. He often wrote of the need to dance with life. Even in its storms, he said, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. So the next time you feel the pull of anxiety, the heart racing, the thoughts spiraling, pause. Don't push it away. Instead, ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to reveal? It might be your mind calling for a courage. It might be your heart asking for a change. Or maybe it is simply life, moving you closer to your next transformation. When you learn to love even the uneasy moments, something quiet happens inside you. You stop running. You stop needing to control everything, and for the first time, you begin to feel free. That is amor fati, to love not only the sunlight, but the storm that makes it shine brighter, because peace is not the absence of anxiety. It is the acceptance of it. It is the calm that comes from realizing that even your uncertainty belongs. Nietzsche believed that strength is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to walk through struggle without losing your light. He often spoke of becoming who you are. But he never said it would be easy to become who you truly are. You must be willing to face the chaos within you, the fears, the contradictions, the parts of yourself you hide from the world. He once wrote, you must carry a chaos inside you to give birth to a dancing star. What he meant was simple, but profound. Your inner storms are not mistakes. They're the raw material of your becoming. Every anxiety, every doubt, every dark night of the soul is a kind of training, a silent teacher preparing you for strength, depth and wisdom. When we numb our discomfort, when we hide from our pain, we also hide from our power. Nietzsche's courage was not a loud, heroic one. It was quiet, stubborn, enduring. The courage to look inwards when the world told him to look away. He wanted us to ask, what if the chaos I fear is actually the birthplace of my meaning? Imagine sitting alone with your anxiety, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. You breathe deeply, and you listen. You begin to realize that beneath the unease is energy, untamed, alive. And if you learn to shape it, it becomes creativity. It becomes resilience. It becomes your strength. Nietzsche saw that life would never be calm all the time. To demand constant peace is to misunderstand existence itself. Instead, he urged us to build a heart so strong, so rooted, that even the storm cannot shake it. He once wrote that a tree that wants to reach to heaven must send its roots deep into hell. This was not pessimism. It was Wisdom. To grow tall, you must also grow deep. To rise into joy, you must face the shadows within you. So when you feel overwhelmed, remember, your task is not to eliminate the chaos. It is to carry it gracefully, to let it teach you balance. There is beauty in that courage. A quiet radiance that grows each time you face what frightens you and say, softly, I am still here. That is Nietzsche's vision of strength, not control, not perfection, but the tender power of one who has met their own darkness and learned to hold it without fear. Because when you stop fighting the chaos, you begin to see what was hidden beneath it. The beginnings of peace. Nietzsche believed that strength is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to walk through struggle without losing your light. He often spoke of becoming who you are, but he never said it would be easy. To become who you truly are, you must be willing to face the chaos within you, the fears, the contradictions, the parts of yourself you hide from the world. He once wrote, "You must carry a chaos inside you to give birth to a dancing star." What he meant was simple, but profound. Your inner storms are not mistakes. They are the raw material of your becoming. Every anxiety, every doubt, every dark night of the soul is a kind of training, a silent teacher preparing you for strength, depth, and wisdom. When we numb our discomfort, when we hide from our pain, we also hide from our power. Nietzsche's courage was not a loud, heroic one. It was quiet, stubborn, enduring. The courage to look inwards when the world told him to look away. He wanted us to ask, what if the chaos I fear is actually the birthplace of my meaning? Imagine sitting alone with your anxiety, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. You breathe deeply and listen. You begin to realize that beneath the unease is energy, untamed, alive. And if you learn to shape it, it becomes creativity, it becomes resilience, it becomes your strength. Nietzsche saw that life would never be calm all the time. To demand constant peace is to misunderstand existence itself. Instead, he urged us to build a heart so strong, so rooted, that even the storm cannot shake it. He once wrote that a tree that wants to reach to heaven must send its roots deep into hell. This was not pessimism, it was wisdom. To grow tall, you must also grow deep. To rise into joy, you must face the shadows within you. So when you feel overwhelmed, remember, your task is not to eliminate the chaos. It is to carry it gracefully, to let it teach you balance. There is beauty in that courage, a quiet radiance that grows each time you face what frightens you and say softly, I am still here. That is Nietzsche's vision of strength. Not control, not perfection, but the tender power of one who has met their own darkness and learned to hold it without fear. Because when you stop fighting the chaos, you begin to see what was hidden beneath it. The beginnings of peace. Nietzsche proposed one of the most haunting and beautiful ideas in all of philosophy, the eternal return. He asked us to imagine that every moment of your life, every joy, every mistake, every small and forgotten gesture, would be repeated again and again for eternity, over and over. Forever. Would you celebrate that thought, or would it crush you? This is not meant to be a literal prediction of time. Nietzsche wasn't suggesting the universe is a loop. It's a psychological test, a mirror held up to your soul. He wanted you to ask yourself, if I had to live this life infinitely, would I still choose it? Most people live as if their days don't matter, waiting for other real life to begin. Someday, somewhere else. But the eternal return strips away the illusion of someday. It brings you face to face with this moment, the one happening now. If this instant were to repeat forever, how would you live it? How would you speak? How would you love? Nietzsche's challenge is not to chase happiness, but to live so intentionally that you would welcome the repetition. To create a life so aligned with your truth that you could look eternity in the eyes and say, yes, again, this idea demands a radical kind of honesty. You cannot hide from yourself when faced with infinity. You must confront the small betrayals, the compromises, the quiet moments of cowardice. You must ask if you are living your life or simply drifting through it. The eternal return is not punishment. It is a gift. It is a call to awaken, to treat each sunrise as sacred, to taste your morning coffee as if it were the first and last time, to listen to the voice of a loved one as if the universe had conspired just once, just for this, to let you hear it. This is how Nietzsche turns a terrifying thought into liberation. If every second will return, then no second is meaningless. Every choice becomes infinite. Every gesture echoes through eternity. And perhaps that realization, that your life could be a masterpiece worth reliving, is the cure to anxiety itself. Because when you live with that level of presence, anxiety has no room to grow. There is only now, and now, and now, repeated endlessly, shining like mirrors in the vast corridors of time. So Nietzsche's question remains, echoing softly in the quiet moments of your day. Would you say yes to your life again, and again, and again? That's the challenge of the eternal return. Not to escape your life, but to craft it into something eternal. Nietzsche once said, "My formula for greatness in a human being is M40, that one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. M40, love of fate. Not acceptance of fate, not entrance of fate, but love. To love one's fate means to embrace every part of life, not just the beautiful or convenient parts, but also the painful, the uncertain, the unbearable. Most people fight their fate. They resist what happens to them. They wish the past were different, or the future easier. But Nietzsche saw this as a fundamental mistake, the source of much suffering and anxiety. Because when you fight against reality, you always lose. M40 is not passive resignation. It's not pretending that everything is fine. Instead, it's the radical act of saying yes to life, in its entirety. Yes to the joy, yes to the heartbreak, yes to the confusion, the loss, and even the moments that seem senseless. For Nietzsche, to love fate is to understand that every event, no matter how small or painful, shapes who you are becoming. The moments you wish had never happened are often the ones that forge your deepest strength. When you look back at your life, you will see how the most difficult chapters often held the seeds of your transformation. M40 is the choice to recognize the truth while you're still living it. Instead of asking, "Why me?" Nietzsche urges us to ask, "What is this teaching me?" When anxiety whispers, "I can't handle this," M40 answers, "You already are." This attitude changes everything. It dissolves the need for control. It replaces fear with curiosity. You begin to see life as a great dance, sometimes graceful, sometimes chaotic, but always meaningful. M40 doesn't demand that you enjoy pain. It simply invites you to stop resisting what is, because when resistance fades, peace emerges. Imagine being able to look at your life, every mistake, every heartbreak, every uncertain moment, and smile, not because it was perfect, but because it was yours. That's M40. It's a declaration that nothing was wasted, that even your scars have purpose, that your life, exactly as it has unfolded, is worthy of love. When you can say yes to your fate, you are no longer at war with life. The world no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes your collaborator, your teacher, your mirror, and slowly, the storm of anxiety quiets. Not because life becomes easier, but because you stop trying to escape it. You no longer ask for a different past or a safer future. You simply live, fully, fearlessly, faithfully. To love your fate is to love your life, not as you wish it were, but as it truly is. That is the heart of Nietzsche's wisdom. That is amor fati. Nietzsche believed that anxiety wasn't an illness to be cured. It was a doorway to strength. In his view, anxiety is not the enemy. It is a signal, a call to growth, a moment when your old self begins to fracture so a new self can emerge. He called this process becoming who you are. Most people try to silence anxiety. They run from it, medicate it, or distract themselves until the feeling fades. But Nietzsche warned that doing so traps you in mediocrity. He said, one must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. That chaos, the uncertainty, the fear, the discomfort, is not something to erase. It is the raw energy that makes transformation possible. When anxiety rises, it's usually because something within you knows you're capable of more, yet you're clinging to safety. The tension you feel is the space between your potential and your comfort zone, from Nietzsche. That tension is sacred. It's proof that you're alive, that you're standing on the edge of becoming. He would say, don't escape it. Listen to it. Ask yourself, what is this anxiety trying to reveal? What truth am I avoiding? What part of me is trying to be born? Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch, the higher self, the self beyond fear, isn't someone who has no anxiety. It's someone who uses anxiety as a tool for evolution. Every time you face your anxiety and act anyway, you reclaim a piece of your power. You prove to yourself that you are not defined by fear. Anxiety becomes your teacher. It strips away illusions and forces you to confront what's real about yourself, your desires, and your limitations. When you run from anxiety, it grows stronger in the dark. When you turn toward it, it begins to transform. In Nietzsche's philosophy, suffering and anxiety are the crucibles of greatness. They burn away everything false, leaving only what is essential and true. He believed that those who suffer deeply have the potential to see deeply, because anxiety, when faced with courage, becomes clarity. It teaches you what you value, what you fear losing, and what you truly desire. And when you understand those things, really understand them, your decisions begin to change. Your life begins to align. Nietzsche reminds us, you cannot avoid the storms of existence, but you can learn to dance in the rain. So instead of asking, how can I get rid of this anxiety? Ask, how can I grow through it? The moment you do, your relationship with fear begins to change. It's no longer a curse, it's a compass. It points you toward the edges of your potential, urging you to expand, to evolve, to become. That's why Nietzsche saw anxiety not as a symptom of weakness, but as a mark of awakening. It means something in you refuses to settle. It means you are alive, still reaching, still becoming. When you can stand in the middle of that storm, breathe, and say, yes, this, too, is part of my path. You have already begun to overcome. You have transformed anxiety from an obstacle into energy, from fear into fuel, and that is how anxiety becomes the path to power. Nietzsche saw anxiety not only as a personal challenge, but as a symptom of something larger, the collapse of shared meaning in the modern world. He famously wrote, God is dead, and we have killed him. By this, he didn't mean a literal deity had died. He meant that humanity's old systems of belief, religion, tradition, blind morality, had lost their power to give life direction, and with that death came a terrifying freedom. Without fixed meaning, we are left in a world that feels vast, chaotic and uncertain. Anxiety becomes inevitable, because the compass we once relied on is gone. But Nietzsche did not mourn this loss. He saw it as an opportunity, a call to create meaning for ourselves, to build values that come from within rather than from authority. He believed that anxiety rises when we sense the void, when we realize there is no pre-written script for our lives, and while that realization is frightening, it's also the beginning of authentic freedom. When the external meaning collapses, the question becomes, what do you choose to value? What will you stand for? Even in a world without guarantees, Nietzsche's answer was radical. Don't look for meaning. Create it. He proposed the idea of amor fati, the love of fate. It's the practice of saying yes to life, not only when it's comfortable, but especially when it's painful or uncertain. To love your fate means to accept your past, your suffering, and your anxiety as necessary parts of your becoming. It means looking at every event, even the most difficult ones, and saying, "This, too, belongs to my story." That acceptance doesn't erase the chaos. It transforms it, because the moment you embrace what you cannot control, anxiety loses its grip. You stop fighting the storm and start moving with it. Nietzsche's world was one of collapse, empires fading, old gods dying, new science challenging every certainty. Our world isn't much different. The anxiety you feel scrolling through endless news feeds, the sense of groundlessness in a world of noise, it's the same existential tremor Nietzsche felt in his Century Dot. But here's the shift he invites us to make. Instead of being crushed by meaninglessness, rise to the challenge of meaning-making. When you choose your own values, when you define what matters to you, the chaos begins to order itself around your purpose. You may not control the world, but you control how you respond to it. You decide what you'll love, what you'll fight for, what you'll become. That act of choosing, of affirming your path, is where anxiety transforms into creation. For Nietzsche, this is what separates the ordinary from the extraordinary. Most people seek comfort. The few who embrace anxiety as the cost of freedom, they become creators, artists of existence. He once wrote, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." In other words, the world may be chaotic, but you can shape your response into something beautiful. You can carve meaning out of the void, sculpt purpose from uncertainty, and every time you do, you push back against the darkness with a light that is entirely your own. That is the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy, not to escape anxiety, but to transmute it. To turn fear into creativity, chaos into order, suffering into art. Because in the end, meaning is not something we find. It is something we forge, and the heat that forges it is the very fire of anxiety itself. Once Nietzsche recognized that life doesn't hand out meaning, the next step was action. To become the creator of your life, you must start by questioning everything you've been taught, every rule, every expectation, every belief you've accepted without testing. This isn't easy. It means facing discomfort, uncertainty, and sometimes loneliness. But it's only through this confrontation that you can begin to forge your own values. Weakness becomes a tool. Failure becomes a lesson. And pain becomes a guide. Every challenge is raw material for the life you choose to build. The Übermensch isn't someone who avoids suffering. It's someone who transforms suffering into strength, who actively shapes their identity rather than being shaped by society or circumstance. The key is not perfection, it's creation. It's saying, "I will define my own purpose. I will become the author of my existence." This process is ongoing. Every choice, every action, every thought is a brushstroke on the canvas of your life. No one else can paint it for you. Nietzsche's teaching isn't a map. It's a call to become a force of creation, to embrace the responsibility and the freedom that comes with that power. In the end, becoming the creator of your life means living deliberately, embracing struggle and refusing to settle for a borrowed meaning. It's the ultimate challenge. And the ultimate reward. A life Nietzsche's philosophy can feel intense, even unsettling. He doesn't give comfort or easy answers, but that's the point. Life itself isn't. Comfortable, and meaning isn't given, it's made. By questioning everything, embracing struggle, and taking full responsibility for your choices, you step into your own power. You move from being a passenger in life to being its creator. Every challenge, every failure, every moment of doubt becomes a building block for something greater, a life defined by your values, your purpose, and your vision. The call is simple, but radical. Stop waiting for a meaning and start creating it. Step into the discomfort. Transform suffering into strength. Become the author of your life. Because in the end, the greatest achievement isn't success, wealth, or recognition. It's a life that is truly, unmistakably yours. That is truly, unmistakably yours.